Thanks for joining me for a discussion of the 4 ballot measures in Lane County that will be decided in the May 2021 election. You may not see all 4 ballot measures on your ballot because the ballots are created so that if you're not in the area affected by the ballot measure, it won't appear on your ballot. So now let's go to screen sharing. So these are the 4 ballot measures that will be on the ballot. And what I'm going to do is go through each one and give you a bit of a summary of the measure and some information about the history of the measure. So the first measure is ballot measure 2318, which is the Mohawk Valley Law Enforcement District. The language says, shall the Mohawk Valley Law Enforcement District form with a permanent tax base of 48 cents per $1,000 assessed value beginning in fiscal year 21-22. This tax rate would cost the average homeowner $121.42 per year based on the median assessed home value of $252,949. If this measure passes, it will create the Mohawk Valley Law Enforcement District with the same boundaries as the Mohawk Valley Rural Fire District. I've mentioned what the permanent tax rate is, and the tax revenues would fund 1 full-time deputy in addition to current services. So let's look at what led up to this ballot measure. In the 1990s, law enforcement under the Lane County Sheriff's Office operated under a community policing program in which deputies were assigned to various regions in the county to provide response and investigation service tailored to the community members in the area. This is known as community policing, and it's been shown to create positive relationships with community members that ultimately result in solving crime and assisting the community in feeling safer. The program was robust in the 1990s, but as timber revenues declined, the community policing program, known as the Resident Deputy Program, suffered budget reductions, and Lane County's public safety program has been in financial crisis for several years. Even though the population served by the Lane County Sheriff's Office has grown, the office currently has only 25 deputies providing response to emergency calls in unincorporated Lane County, including the Mohawk Valley. This is about 3 deputies and a supervisor per shift to cover the area from the coast to the Middle Sister. With limited resources, deputies are currently unable to respond to all calls and are able to provide investigation on only a fraction of those calls. This has not gone unnoticed by Mohawk Valley residents, and a group of community members met with the sheriff's office to figure out solutions in 2018. The creation of a special law enforcement district whose boundaries would overlap with the Mohawk Rural Fire District and be funded by taxes from those in the district seemed like a reasonable solution. The taxes are paid by the district, the taxes are used in the district. With the support of the sheriff and county administrator, the ballot measure with this plan was taken to the county commissioners, who voted to put it on the ballot. I will show you a map of the district in a minute, but let's talk about the cost. There will be this permanent tax levy of 48 cents per $1,000 assessed valuation. Note that the assessed value of a house is not the sale price. The revenue would fund 1 full-time deputy assigned to the Mohawk Valley to provide enhanced law enforcement response and investigation, in addition to current services. If passed, the revenues generated would be statutorily protected from being reallocated outside the Mohawk Valley Law Enforcement District. So here's a map of the district. Here is the Eugene Springfield metropolitan area, if you will, and coming out of the northeast corner of Springfield is the Mohawk Valley Rural Fire District. And I apologize for the quality of this map. This is the best map that I could get off the web. But if you want to know if you're going to be in this law enforcement district, or if your mother is going to be in this district, go to the Lane County website and look under fire districts, put in the address of the person you're interested in, and that they will locate the fire district that serves that person. If that fire district is the Mohawk Valley Rural Fire District, then that person would be in this law enforcement district. So what are the pros for this? There's a clear need for additional public safety officers in the Mohawk Valley to deal with property crime and traffic offenses. A dedicated deputy who becomes familiar with the area and its citizens will be a more effective police officer. What are the cons? There will be an increase in taxes for property owners in the new law enforcement district. There is also the potential for confusion about who is a member of the new district. So let's go to the next measure. This is ballot measure 2319, support for 4-H extension services for Lane County. The ballot language says, shall Lane County support 4-H and extension service with a 5-year local option for operations and capital. That is 2.8 cents per $1,000 assessed value, which will begin the fiscal year 21-22. This measure may cause property taxes to increase more than 3%. If approved, Lane County would establish a dedicated local option tax supporting extension programs in Lane County. The purpose of the tax is to expand existing 4-H and other positive youth development opportunities to rural communities, to continue volunteer programs such as Master Gardener, Master Food Preserver, Compost and Pruning Specialist, Food Pantry, and Master Woodland Manager, to develop and offer educational programs focused on community emergency preparedness, to continue to provide food safety and preservation, nutrition and wellness education, to continue to provide technical assistance to farmers, woodland owners, and nursery growers, and to expand educational programming to all communities that encourages high school completion and college access. Now for some background. Oregon State University, through state and federal funds, provides the majority of funding for extension experts in Lane County. County funding was eliminated for the local extension office in 2010 due to reductions in federal timber harvests and the loss of federal safety net revenue. After closing for months, the extension office was moved and reopened by volunteers and skeleton staffing from OSU. It was operating in a limited fashion in Lane County on federal and state tax resources, user fees, gifts, grants, and contracts. A ballot measure to restore some county funding was on the ballot in 2016. It passed, but it expires this year. So the Extension Service is the off-campus education system of OSU that addresses community needs through practical, research-based educational programs. It has been active in Lane County since 1911, servicing both urban and rural homeowners, farmers and ranchers, woodland owners, business people, families. Basically, many in Lane County have benefited from this service. The paid staff are augmented by 340 volunteers. So what does the Extension Service do? Or what does the Levy do? It pays for instructors in the Master Gardener and Master Food Preserver programs. If funding is approved, there would be an expansion in the small farms and livestock forages programs. The levy that was passed in 2016 allowed for the reestablishment of the 4-H and forestry programs. It also provided operational support for forestry, horticulture, and small farms by funding faculty with expertise in those areas. The direct advice and training provided to producers and property owners made their operations more sustainable and profitable. The levy funds have also enabled significantly increased community outreach via social media for all extension programs. What's the cost? The requested levy is 2.8 cents per $1,000 assessed value, which amounts to $5.60 per year for a house assessed at $200,000, which is about the median assessed value of a home in Lane County. Because the previous levy was a temporary levy, this levy needs to be approved to continue the extension and 4-H services. Well, what's the track record of services provided in 2016 and to be continued and expanded with this ballot measure? To take just one example, after the levy passed, Lauren Grand was hired as the extension forester serving the county. In the last 4 years, Lauren has conducted more than 90 community workshops and presentations and provided sustainable forestry information to 3,200 Lane County residents. Like you, I have been involved in workshops. The composting workshop was particularly good. I received information about my sad roses. And when the pandemic occurred, extension programs pivoted to an online educational platform to maintain community services safely during the pandemic, including the virtual plant clinic, to answer any gardening questions. What are the pros and cons? If it passes, faculty, staff, and services supporting 4-H, forestry, horticulture, family and community health, and small farms could be maintained. A $1 investment in OSU extension by Lane County generates $4 through other funding sources. What's a con? The measure will increase the current levy of 1.5 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation to 2.8 cents per $1,000, which is an increase of almost 100% and amounts to $5.60 per year for a property assessed at $200,000. And now on to ballot measure 2320, which reads, look at it, Oregon 5-year local option levy for general operations for Lane Fire Authority. The question is, shall the district impose 35 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation for general operations for 5 years, beginning in 2021? This measure may cause property taxes to increase more than 3%. If passed, the district, which is based in Veneta, will use the tax revenue to hire 3 full-time firefighter medics. This increase in staffing will help to ensure faster response times, better coverage, and reduce wait times. In addition, the tax revenues will help fund general operational expenses, such as replacing and repairing fire apparatus, many of which are past their expected service life. So, what is the Lane Fire Authority and where did it come from? We're used to thinking about fire departments funded by city taxes, but the responsibility for rural fire protection and emergency medical care is done through special districts in Oregon, which may be funded by grants or taxes or both. There were initially 25 fire districts in the state, but that number has been reduced by consolidation to 16. In this case, the Lane Fire Authority was created by the consolidation of Lane County Fire District Number 1 and Lane Rural Fire and Rescue in 2012. In 2018, it consolidated with the Santa Clara Fire District, and they are currently working together under contract for all service. The Lane Fire Authority provides both fire and medical services. From 2015 to 2019, the number of calls increased by 29%, from about 4,700 to 6,200, and over 3/4 of those calls were medically related. Who does it serve? Well, the area of fire protection is around 282 square miles, located northwest and south of the western part of Eugene. This area encompasses, but it's not limited to, the cities and areas of Santa Clara, Irving, Alvador, Franklin, Alderwood, Elmira, Noti, Walton, Veneta, Crow, Lorraine Highway, Fox Hollow, and Spencer Creek. There are about 44,000 patrons within their boundaries. There are 16 stations shown on the map on the next slide, 3 of which have 24/7 career staffing as opposed to volunteers. More about this in a minute. But here's the map of the fire district. And just in case you are counting and you see that you're noticing that the numbers go up to 117, and I said there are only 16 stations. You'll notice if you look closely, there's no 110. So this is where the fire stations are located. But remember, there are only 3 that are staffed 24/7. Okay, let's go back. There also are emergency medical services by the Lane Fire Authority. The ambulance service area is larger than the fire protection area, 425 square miles. Lane Fire Authority provides ambulance service to to the Lane Fire Authority area, Lake Creek, Junction City, the majority of Harrisburg, portions of Monroe, Santa Clara, and Eugene, Springfield when needed. And how does it serve them? Well, as I said, 3 of the 16 stations shown on the map have 24/7 career staffing as opposed to volunteers. They currently have 37 paid staff, including medic unit staff and station staff, 40-hour daytime staff, administration staff, single role medic staff, and part-time maintenance staff. This ballot measure would add 3 new full-time staff. At the current time, they are aided by 62 volunteers. So a reasonable question is, why do they need the additional staff? There are 2 types of volunteers. There are community volunteers who live within the community and are primarily concerned with the protection and safety of their communities. For those of us who grew up in rural areas, this is the type of volunteer fire department that we're familiar with. There is now, however, a second class of volunteers known as out-of-district volunteers. This type of volunteer is relatively new to the scene and is interested in using their service as experience for a career. The out-of-district volunteers are now predominantly college and young adult age volunteers working their way towards a career as a firefighter. The out-of-district volunteers do a 24-hour shift every 6 days and are excused then from school or work. The paid staff responders are all EMT intermediates or paramedics. About 75% of the volunteers are EMTs or higher, and the Lane Fire Authority offers in-house emergency medical responder EMR training yearly to the firefighters. New firefighters are trained on how to do basic vitals and assist with equipment, patient packaging, and documentation on medical calls. While both sets of volunteers are highly trained, the community volunteers are often part of the force for 10 to 20 years, making their way through the ranks and bringing with them experience and knowledge. In contrast, the out-of-district volunteers are typically able to commit 3 to 5 years of service before they finish their training and education and then move into full-time paid roles with agencies throughout Oregon and the United States. The change from long-term volunteers to shorter-term folks creates some uncertainty in staffing and increases the need for additional paid staff. What does the funding provide? The current request is for a levy of 35 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation and will provide for hiring 3 full-time firefighter medics, as well as to provide funding for general operating expenses, such as upgrading aging equipment. Passage of the levy will add an additional firefighter 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This eliminates those times when only one person is staffed in portions of the district. Why is this measure on the ballot again? A similar request was on the ballot in in November 2020 with a request for a levy of 50 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, rather than the 35 cents requested here, which would have supported hiring an additional full-time crew, upgrading aging equipment. Many of the engines and tenders are over 20 years old, and building up the cash reserves. That measure failed. It should be mentioned that the Lane Fire Authority is not trying to support itself only with these taxes. It also seeks additional sources of funding. They were successful in receiving a grant for a new fire engine valued at over $600,000. However, grant funding is uncertain and can't be counted on to support an essential service. Lane County Fire Authority does not receive support from the government agency of Lane County, nor from the city of Veneta, where they are located. What are the pros and cons? Pro: if the Lane Fire Authority levy is unsuccessful if the Lane Fire Authority is unsuccessful in securing a 35-cent per $1,000 levy, it will be unable to adequately staff those areas, as well as likely to make cuts in current paid staff in the future, further impacting response capabilities. The additional revenue will be used only to support the activities of the Lane Fire Authority. What's the con? The measure will result in increased property taxes. For a house assessed at $200,000, not the market value, this will amount to a monthly cost of $5.83. And to the last ballot measure, 20-321, which will allow the McKenzie School District to issue bonds for school construction and repair. So let me move my picture off. The title is McKenzie School District number 68, Lane County, bonds to construct and renovate, repair, and improve district facilities. The question is, shall McKenzie School District number 68 issue $15,215,000 in bonds and receive a $4 million state matching grant to renovate schools? If the bonds are approved, they will be payable from taxes on property or property ownership that are not subject to the limits of sections 11 and 11B, Article 11 of the Oregon Constitution. So, if passed, the district will receive a $4 million state grant, but only if the bonds are approved. The bonds are expected to finance construction, renovation, repair, and improvement of district facilities, including a new elementary school, play structures, demolition of the existing elementary school, high school improvements, upgraded gymnasium, security and safety features throughout the district, a reconfigured bus drop-off area, and site improvements. A citizen oversight committee would ensure proceeds are used as intended. The estimated tax rate is $1.92 per $1,000 of assessed property value. Let's look at the background. As noted by the first question, it was on the ballot in 2020, but because of the Holiday Farm fire, the school board asked that voters reject the ballot measure to give them time to assess their needs moving forward and to avoid burdening the families of the district with a tax increase as they were beginning to recover from the fire. May is the last chance to secure the $4 million OSCIM, Oregon School Capital Improvement Matching Grant from the state. If the bond doesn't pass, they'd have to reapply for the competitive program. What does it request and why do they need the money? The request is for over $15 million in bonds, which would include that $4 million matching grant from the state. And it would replace the 70-year-old elementary school and address issues in other buildings, such as aging facilities and deferred maintenance projects, a leaking gym roof, HVAC, plumbing, and mechanical systems that are beyond their life expectancy, and hazardous materials, including asbestos, tile flooring, lead, mold, radon, and PCBs. The McKenzie School District's proposed bond measure will also have upgraded security cameras, the intercom system, the fire alarm system. It includes adding access control gates to the campus entry. The district said that its regular maintenance budget would not be able to cover the proposed projects without the bond. The district spends an average of $45,000 per year on repairs and maintenance of its facilities, according to a press release. The estimated cost of repairing and renovating the McKenzie Elementary School, not including a seismic upgrade or identified upgrades to other buildings, would be $6.3 million. Aside from broken windows and smoke damage, the schools didn't suffer damage from the September fire. The chair of the McKenzie School Board said in an interview with KLCC that the board wanted to keep the cost of the bond below $2 per $1,000 property value. He added, as the river rebuilds, then the property values will increase, thereby that cost per thousand should come down. As property value, since they are asking for a fixed sum, as property values increase, then the rate of tax can decrease. The bond only narrowly failed, even with the urging of the school board in the November 2020 election. So what are sections 11 and 11B, Article 11 of the Oregon Constitution? These mean that the ballot measure is not subject to the maximum of $5,000 per $1,000 of assessed valuation on property tax assessments for educational services. The same is true for other bonds that might count toward the $10 per $1,000 limit for general government. Okay, what are the pros and cons? The pros: the measure would replace a 70-year-old elementary school with a new building with a seismic upgrade, as well as provide needed repairs to other buildings. The district's able to leverage the money for these repairs with that $4 million state matching grant, which it will need to reapply for if the measure fails. The cons: the request for bonds will increase taxes. And this concludes my presentation on the ballot measures. Thanks for listening.